In this video, we'll be showing the 7 sales team assets that consistently increase booked calls, show rates, conversion rates, and cash collected, and why most info businesses are solving the wrong problem when revenue starts to slow down. Through working with clients running multiple 7-figure and 8-figure offers, we've discovered that most businesses don't actually have a lead problem. They have an asset problem. The difference between average sales performance and exceptional sales performance often comes down to a handful of systems that most companies just never built. That's exactly why we're making this video today, to walk you through the 7 sales assets that help sales teams generate more revenue from the leads they're already booking in, and why some of these assets are worth more than entire ad campaigns. Let's get right into it. Why do most business owners think they need more leads when they actually need better assets? Here's a common problem that I see. A lot of business owners get stuck in the trap of increasing ad spend and continuously booking more and more calls. The problem is usually your cost per book call and your ad expenses increase as you scale and over time. So that can't be the only lever that you pull on indefinitely. Obviously, yes, you need to raise ad spend and get more calls booking in to continue to scale the company, but there's actually a few other levers you can pull that are completely free to you. So what I mean by that is some of the content you're sending out pre-call, some of the content you're sending out post-call, some of the content that people go to once they book a call from your email list or the confirmation page. There's a lot of assets and videos you can essentially force feed people inside of a sales process to increase the conversion and the DPL on the back end. And better yet, even lower no-show rates, cancellation rates, and so on. So it's not always just about how do I shove more money down Facebook and YouTube's throat, but how do I actually optimize my sales process and give my closers and team better assets inside of the sales process and to my prospects before and after actually scheduling calls. Now, what happens when every lead enters an underbuilt sales process? Well, I can tell you a really great example of this I just had the other day. I was talking to a company and they're essentially spending $250 to $400 to book an appointment. That isn't always a huge problem, but when their sales team is absolute trash and they have no consistent sales process, it obviously becomes much more significant. And in this situation, they had an extremely low DPL and conversion rate. Well, when I audited their sales team and their sales calls, I found they sent no pre-call assets before the call. There was no assets being consumed anywhere in the funnel. They're essentially running a cold traffic VSL, which typically wouldn't be a big problem, but it's not time gated. No one was going through it. And then when they went to the thank you page, there was one 5-minute video that essentially just told them to accept a Google Calendar invite. So there's nothing that happened before the call. Then they get to the call, and instead of the setter running like a thorough discovery process and actually building some internal pressure, she essentially had a surface level conversation where she just asked if they were qualified or not and booked them directly with the closer and didn't even ask if they'd watched anything or even sent them anything after her call. Then they went to the closing call. He didn't clarify if they've even gone through anything and essentially went through also a 7-minute discovery and then proceeded to have a 40-minute long pitch. This is obviously fucked up for so many reasons, but even the biggest one is at no point is anyone making sure anyone's gone through anything before actually going for the jugular and trying to close the deal. And the big problem with this becomes is if you're running a cold traffic VSL funnel and there's no VSL time gated, they probably booked right through. They saw an ad 24 hours before. They didn't watch the VSL. Now they're on a set call. They're just getting asked if they have money. Didn't consume any other content. And now they're on a closing call going through a 45-minute pitch. The likelihood of them closing is extremely low because 1, there's literally no education happening in the funnel, and 2, there's literally no internal pressure being built where you can hold them accountable to literally anything if they give you an objection at the end. So if more leads aren't always the answer, the next question becomes, which assets actually move the needle. Let's start with the first two assets that sell prospects before your sales team ever gets on the phone. Why is a post-booking page one of the highest ROI sales assets a business can build? So when we look at a post-booking page, this is just a free place of real estate to put any content that you want that a prospect goes directly to after scheduling a call and before they ever talk to your sales team. So there's a few assets that you can actually put on here. One of our favorite ones is a behind the curtain view, actually breaking down your program, what it is, how it works in detail. And this could literally be a Loom video where you share your screen and walk them through everything. You actually log into the portal. You actually show them an example of a one-on-one coaching call. You go through everything in detail so they can see that it's real and all the help and support that they'd actually get if they signed up to your backend program. The next video that can help out tremendously is a 6-month roadmap that actually breaks down the journey of a customer once they invest in a program and what the next 6 months would actually look like in terms of once they have the business built and the ROI that they can actually achieve. A great way to do this is literally pull up an Excel sheet and break down the numbers. You know, if it's a real estate program, for example, hey, if you take this much, invest in this type of property, and you set it up in these ways, you can expect to net this much money every single month. So you can literally break down the math in detail and kind of create a 6-month game plan of exactly how they can get to their desired result, whether that's 10K a month or whatever the main target might be. Now, how does an objection handling content library eliminate resistance before the call? When I say content library, I mean this could be done in so many different ways, but the reality is you can put video content in front of your prospects before they get to a sales call that literally just pre-handle the most common objections for your offer. Now, I want to distinguish common objections for a second because obviously there's things that are never going to be able to get handled in actual video content, such as think about it, fear, got to talk to my wife, money logistics, so on and so forth. But there's usually specific questions and concerns depending on your niche and vertical that almost always come up every single time. An easy one from almost any offer is, why do this over e-commerce, over affiliate marketing, over real estate, where you essentially pre-handle every other business model and why yours is actually the best or makes the most sense in this situation. There's a ton of other ones that you can go through. The best way to do this is just pull a bunch of call recordings or talk to your sales team directly and just get the most common questions and concerns that you can address before the sales process. And again, keep in mind, obviously with fear, money, logistics, spouse, these are always things that are gonna come up and your sales reps have to be able to handle. But again, there's usually hyper-specific ones for your offer that you can quickly address. Once prospects understand what they're buying and have their biggest concerns answered, the next challenge is making sure they actually show up and continue moving through your sales process. Why is an appointment confirmation system still one of the most profitable assets in sales? Well, this is straightforward for so many reasons. If you do not stay in front of people, they will forget about you. There is so much going on a day-to-day basis for any average person that even if they opt in your funnel, they book a call, they will forget so fast, especially if it was a spur of the moment sort of thing. Now, obviously, one of the easiest things you can possibly do is just set up appointment confirmations and pre-follow-up text and email sequences that remind them of a call, and better yet, push them back to some of your content that actually pre-sells them and pre-handles objections before a call. The simplest way of doing this is just having your sales reps call their leads after someone schedules in to introduce themselves, push them back to some of your content, and get them a little bit comfortable before their upcoming appointment. The next simplest thing that comes to mind is just making sure you have text and email sequences actually coming out from your sales reps after someone schedules. So they have their phone number, they have their email, and once again, better yet, providing links and resources in those messages to push them back to your content that will help them close better once the prospect shows up. Now, obviously, in one of the most basic situations is calendar reminders and Calendly, schedule once, whatever it is, where there's immediate confirmations, 24-hour reminders, 2-hour reminders, 15-minute reminders, so on and so forth. And then on top of that, there should be a book a call sequence coming directly from the company, whether that's a few days or in between when they scheduled and have the call, that, yes, once again, push them back to some of your content, testimonials, or some of the videos that I mentioned earlier. It gives you quite a few formats to hit prospects from while still sparsing out the communication so they don't feel bombarded from just one single direction. Now, how can Promo Blast generate revenue from people you've already acquired? So there's a few ways you can go about this, but you likely will build up a database over time, already do have a massive database of people who have opted in, booked in, bought something from you, had a sales call, didn't close, so on and so forth. And there's a lot you can actually do with this via reactivation campaigns. One of the most basic ones to implement right now is go back to everyone who's had a sales call but did not close. So this could be your general follow-up, good fit later, no money, so on and so forth. Create a text and email blast that goes out to every single one of those leads and essentially offer them some kind of unique promo, whether that's additional coaching, whether that's a unique angle on your current offer, or literally like $500 to $1,000 off your actual coaching program. Something simple that would reactivate those leads, re-engage them, and get them back on the calendar. There's obviously so much more you can do with this when you really layer out all the different lead types and depending on if you have multiple different funnels, but that's literally one of the simplest ones you can implement today. Now that you see how stronger sales assets improve show rates, buyer intent, and revenue without increasing ad spend, if you want help growing your business as a whole, click the link below, watch our video breaking down exactly how we can run, build, manage, and scale your sales team. Now, why should every business build an FAQ vault? Having an FAQ vault can be so helpful, and you could literally do this where you answer questions in single videos, where like every single common FAQ is literally a video that you shoot that's 2 to 3 minutes long that you put on a separate page or put somewhere where your closers can actually send to prospects when they come up as a follow-up asset or resource. But really where this is going to be helpful kind of goes back to when you have common questions and concerns, right? You have these set of common objections that come up with almost every single prospect. So tell me, what is the point of not just addressing them head on? It's kind of like you know that there's 10 different questions and objections that come up, but you just wait until you actually ask for someone to pay you until you answer them. When you think about it, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Also, when someone's going through your funnel and your sales process, do you think they're more likely to show up for a sales call when they feel confident and clear about what's being provided? Or do you think they're less likely? I think we know it's what's pretty obvious there. Not to mention, when you are actually hiring and onboarding new sales reps, this is something you can have them consume as well that will make it really clear for them on how these things need to be answered when they do come up with prospects. Now, how does something like a sales team resource doc become a force multiplier for an entire sales team? I can't tell you how many times I'll talk to a company and I ask them to send over some assets and resources for their funnel, product, sales process, so on and so forth, and they literally have nothing. They literally pull together a couple random links and send them over haphazardly. And in retrospect, that's really not a problem, but where it does become a problem is how are the sales reps that they're hiring or would hire have any place or resource to go to actually gain information about the offer and the product? Well, the truth is that they really don't. And especially when you are creating a closer onboarding process, it makes it so much easier when you have a set in stone asset and resource for them to go to. On a day-to-day basis, you're also going to have a lot of sales reps come to you with the same questions over and over and over. So this is going to save you so much time as a business owner to have set in stone SOPs, resources, templates that you can just point your sales reps back to every single time. And you really should have a set closer onboarding process anyways, or when you hire somebody new, there's a set of standards and requirements that they actually have to go through before even getting on their first sales call, like all of your funnel links, the VSLs, webinars, previous recorded sales calls, the sales script, and so on. Once you've built assets that answer questions consistently and improve execution across your team, the next step is helping prospects see exactly where they're going. Why do prospects struggle to justify an investment even when they want the outcome? Well, obviously the layers here are very, very deep. And the majority of it's gonna come down to the actual sales call itself. And this is gonna be probably one of the most important assets that you build and create for your sales team is the actual sales process you want them to follow on a day-to-day basis. If you do not have a sales script for your company or something set in stone and your closers just get on the phone and wing it, you are literally cooked. Honestly, you shouldn't even be watching this video. You should pause here and go pull up a Google Doc and start creating a sales process and sales script for your team to follow. Now that we've addressed that, let's get down to the root cause. It's really going to be uncertainty, confusion, fear, so on and so forth. How do you get rid of uncertainty, confusion, and fear? Well, you start by actually educating them and making them clear on what you do and why you do it. So again, going back to pre-call resources getting sent out after the call, and then obviously the sales process. I cannot express the importance of a proper discovery in a sales call. I would argue that discovery is the most important part of the sales process, where you actually uncover what their problems are, what they're going through, so you actually know the best way to help them and hold them accountable at the end. But if you skip these steps, if you don't educate them properly, if you don't indoctrinate them on what you do and why you do it, and then have a damn good sales process to follow where your sales reps actually go deep before asking for payment, you're going to continue to have mistrust and confusion in the process. Not to mention the congruence of your funnel and the sales process and everything working in accordance. You can't be saying something on your ads and then all of a sudden you're saying something different in the funnel. You can't be saying something in the funnel, but then all of a sudden be saying something different on the phone. Everything needs to be aligned. If you say something on the ad, your closer should be able to speak the same language to the prospects when they actually get on the phone. If there's all these gaps, it's going to create a lot of discontent for the customers, and you are going to lose them along the way. How does a future pacing asset increase buying confidence? Now, what do I mean by future pacing assets? This could be testimonials. This could be your closers literally pulling up your active community for your high ticket offer and literally scrolling through and showing the wins inside of there so the customer can put themselves in your current client's shoes and see how they're going to get results. This could be that video I mentioned earlier that you could throw on your thank you page that quite literally future paces out the next 6 months. This could be results from the program, because in your sales process, your closers should probably be demoing something for the most part, depending on your offer. Some offers, it does make sense to have a phone call, but for the most part, you're probably on Zoom and probably should be on Zoom. And if you are, you should be leveraging that to your advantage by obviously looking at body language, but also showing assets on the call as you go through the pitch that can help the prospect see what their future outcome would actually be. Now that you understand how clarity influences buying decisions, let's look at the final piece that ties all 7 assets together so you can see the full picture. Now, why does every one of these assets increase revenue per lead? Well, because everything has a multiplying effect. When you're really, really good at sales and you're really, really good at business, you're playing a game of inches and squeezing out cash wherever you can. Now, some of these things can have a pretty big facelift. Like if you have no pre-call confirmations, no closers reaching out to leads when they book, if you have no long form assets and resources for people to consume in the sales process, these things can make a pretty significant impact. We've literally seen by just setting up a proper thank you page, it almost double the DPL of a sales team. But at the end of the day, what you're trying to accomplish is creating the best sales process possible, where when a prospect sees an ad, everything they go through is congruent and you're hitting them from every angle possible to help increase conversion and DPL by the time you actually ask for payment. And with a lot of these things that I've mentioned, they're free. It actually costs you no money as a business owner. Obviously, it takes time, which you do have to consider your ROI on. But the reality is putting videos on a thank you page is practically free, right? Having a proper sales process is practically free. Yes, you have to do the work to implement it, but it will make such a big impact on your business and all of your KPIs. Now that you've seen the 7 sales assets that improve show rates, increase buyer confidence, strengthen follow-up, eliminate objections, and generate more revenue from the leads that you already have, you can start identifying where your sales process is leaving money on the table. If you want help scaling your sales team, click the link below to watch the video where we'll show you exactly how we build the entire sales team infrastructure for offers just like yours. And don't forget to subscribe.